Dirac's antimatter hypothesis is not science by Francis T.S. Narrated by Benjamin U. Firstly, are we living in a zero-summed universe? Dirac said yes. But is it mathematical gimmick? Dirac's antimatter hypothesis. One of the best observatory must be everyday consequences that we had encountered in the past thousands of years history. We knew physically we change with time, but not changing time, from which we knew that every physical aspect attached with us goes with us. It is impossible for us to leave one of our arms behind, even severely amputated, from which we see that amputated arm may not attached with us, but follows us to the next day and after. For a year we wander about ourselves physically associated with time. We knew today is different day. From yesterday and tomorrow will be another day of uncertainty. Although constantly wondering about our space and time for thousands of years, we have opted to accept a mathematically oriented physicist told us our past observations are wrong. It seems to me we have treated mathematics as science, but mathematics does not need to obey the laws of nature. A zero-summed universe model. Figure 1 depicts a well-accepted zero-sum universe model that it violates all laws of nature. This is one of the worst models that have been used for over a century. This means that all the past substances remained within our symmetry universe and waiting for us to visit. Figure 1 shows a zero-summed universe model where Dirac equation was developed from. This is essentially the Einstein's 4D spacetime continuum that had been used by many theoretical physicists for over a century. Dirac's a mathematical-oriented physicist. In view of Dirac's analysis, he is more a mathematical physicist than a physically realizable scientist. His derivation was so entrenched with mathematics and physical attributes. His apparent error can be depicted in Figure 2a, where speeds of all the particles were missing. Secondly, if we insert a universal clock within his hypothesis as depicted in Figure 2b, it simply cannot exist within our temporal t is greater than 0 space, since substance and emptiness are mutually exclusive. Figure 2a shows Dirac's hypothesis was developed within an empty space paradigm, which is non-physical realizable paradigm, since empty space and substance are mutually exclusive, i.e. temporal t is greater than 0 exclusive principle, as shown in Figure 2b. Secondly, how can particles move within a space which has no time, since it is time moves the particles? Dirac's equation was derived from an empty space paradigm. His equation is time independent that violates temporal t is greater than 0 law of space. For example, within our temporal t is greater than 0 space, entropy increases with time chances for particles to meet is uncertain, particularly for smaller particles. Furthermore, without the existence of time, i.e. temporal is greater than zero, particles cannot move. A correct paradigm for Dirac. On the other hand, if Dirac's hypothesis is submerging within a temporal t is greater than zero space paradigm, as depicted in figure 1b in previous slide, where E negative and E positive are the negative and positive charged particle, mu positive and mu negative are the muons. With reference to a temporal t is greater than zero space model as presented, I would challenge mathematically oriented physicists to evaluate Dirac's postulation if they could. Nevertheless, if the insertion of a universal clock under the law of temporal constraint, please show me Dirac can bring particle E negative and E positive together. Furthermore, the assumed mu negative and mu positive must also obey law of temporal. In other words, if his equation is correct, consequence from his postulation can only happen after the causality. That cannot happen at current moment of time, t is equal to zero, or even ahead of time. This is the primary reason that I do not have to disprove of his equation mathematically, since his hypothesis had firstly violated the law of temporal. Overall, without a physically realizable paradigm, is very unlikely to obtain a physically realizable solution, since science is a mathematical language, but speaking for the truth. What Dirac's equation means. It is not a surprise that Dirac's equation is a zero-summed, non-energy conservative equation as given by I del dash minus m psi of t is equal to zero. Since his hypothesis was built on a zero-summed empty space, this is precisely why Dirac had postulated antimatters that existed in the negative time domain, as in contrast with our temporal universe, only exists at a current moment of time, i.e. t is equal to zero. Nevertheless, if Dirac's equation is written by a non-zero-summed form as given by I del dash psi of t is equal to m psi of t, I am sure he might not have postulated that antimatters existed in the negative time domain, since there has no physical space, i.e. null, behind or ahead of current moment of time, i.e. t is equal to zero. Even by his complicated analysis, mathematics alone cannot alleviate a non-physically realizable solution. What is an energy conservation universe? Firstly, let me show our temporal t is greater than zero universe creation as depicted in figure 2a. We see that any substance within our universe goes with the universe, i.e. time, which means that everything within our universe degrades somewhat with time. In words, It is the amount of degraded energy, i.e. work done, that fuels the life of our universe, which includes us. Since entropy within our universe increases with the expanding universe, as depicted in Figure 2b, our universe is an energy conservation dynamics subspace. Figure 2a shows that everything goes with the universe, even to an old shoe cannot leave behind, as depicted in B. Since there is no space before or after the current moment t is equal to 0 universe, our universe has one and only one physical consequence at current moment t is equal to 0. What a temporal t is greater than 0 universe is. Figure 3 depicted a composited diagram of our temporal universe, which is situated within a larger temporal space, which the closest to the truth model that I have known, since it does not violate the known laws of nature, i.e. law of time, law of energy conservation, and others, in which we see that our universe was created by a huge energy, i.e. E is equal to 1/2 mc squared, which is like an enlarging hot air balloon, from which we see that sooner or later the expanding universe will exhaust all its energy that created her by continually energy degrading, i.e. entropy increasing with time. That is the end of our universe, as we see that all her degraded energy will be deposited within the larger temporal t is greater than 0 space that our universe once embedded in which I have shown this is one of the best universe creation model that obeys all the known laws of nature. Figure 3 shows a time-composited temporal universe, in which we see that our universe was created within a pre-existent temporal space. Otherwise, Big Bang initiation cannot be started. What Dirac's antimatter means. Furthermore, let me take the Dirac equation as given by for I del dash minus m psi of t is equal to 0. It is a zero-summed equation, which implies that anti-energy and anti-mass exist ahead of t is equal to 0, i.e. t is less than 0. But our universe is going with time. Nevertheless, those antimatters or anti-energy were supposed to have exited in the negative time of our universe that violates the law of energy conservation that created our universe. Then how can Dirac justify antimatters within our current time space, for which his equation is wrong, even though his mathematics is correct? Mathematically speaking, zero-summed and non-zero-summed equations are the same, but the interpretation is different, as from science standpoint. Nevertheless, if Dirac is written in a non-zero-summed form, as given by I del dash is equal to m psi of t, which it is very difficult for us to accept his antimatter postulation, from which we see that how mathematical physicists had done to our science, since science is mathematical language, supposed speaking for the truth. For A. Hirschfield, the supersysteric Dirac equation, Imperial College Press, London, 2011. Conclusion. Since Dirac was one of the most legendary mathematical-oriented physicists who had established a cornerstone for mathematical physicists without the elimination of his work, it will be difficult to move on for a physically realizable physics. It seems to me Dirac's mathematical physics and realizable physics are mutually exclusive, as from physically oriented standpoint, Dirac's is a bunch of mathematical analysis. It does not offer any physical realizable attributes to science, but just mathematics, which turns out more damaged than beneficial. Nevertheless, Dirac's mathematical gimmick is even worse than Einstein's relativity theory, of which Einstein had produced a correct equation, E is equal to mc squared, but Dirac has none. Dirac's work is one of the many examples that mathematical physics has confused the essence of physical reality of science. Like quantum theory of Schrödinger, it has more mathematics than physical reality. It seems to me that mathematically oriented physicists do not understand our own self is a subspace that goes with time but not changes time. For instance, once we have gone by time, but we still trapped within the dynamic universe. It is not possible to leave behind time because there has not even an existent space for us to be left behind. Furthermore, mathematical physics have done more damages than benefits to our fundamental physics, since science is a mathematics, but speaking for the truth. Believe me or not, tune on any of those science channels to find out. Thank you.